So has it all been released? On the eve of the massive presidential debate, Vice President Harris unveils her platform, what it reveals about her candidacy, what the White House is saying tonight.
What I can say is the president agrees with her bold policy and agenda and her leadership.
Also tonight, here on the Hill, Donald Trump's position on marijuana, how he intends to vote in his home state, plus why the White House wants mental health to be treated just like your physical health. And one of the top fighters against government waste joins us live. Does he think Elon Musk is the one who should be in charge of penny pinching? Hello from Washington. I'm Blake Berman. You are watching the most politically unpredictable show on all of television. This is The Hill on NewsNation. "57 days until Election Day tonight, 27 hours as well until the big debate, when we find out if the presidential race changes one way or another again. Both Donald Trump and the Vice President Kamala Harris are off the campaign trail tonight, preparing for tomorrow. But back here in Washington, lawmakers returned from their summer break with dueling reports on the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, which included the death of 13 service members in the final days. Republicans contending today that President Biden had his mind made up on leaving Afghanistan, they say in a report. They also argue that he ignored warnings from top generals and that there wasn't a plan for a mass evacuation. Democrats here in Washington released their own response as well, calling all of that election year politics. And they blame Trump for his role in the initial negotiations with the Taliban.
This was a catastrophic failure of epic proportions.
There was, in fact, planning for evacuations, planning that started in the spring of 2021 and included all the requisite agencies.
Now, you have to imagine what went wrong will be a part of tomorrow night's debate. Vice President Harris today, by the way, seemingly answered some of her critics. For the first time, now 50 days into her campaign, she listed a policies page on her website. Now, many Americans still clearly are looking for answers, as a New York Times poll shows that 28% say they need to learn more about Harris. Of those who want information, 66% say they want to know about her policies. The White House pressed today on if the vice president should be viewed as a progressive Democrat.
I'm not going to stand here and label the vice president. What I can say is the president agrees with her bold policy and agenda and her leadership.
Coming up here on the Hill, one of Donald Trump's former spokesmen joins us live, and I'll share with you what I am hearing from the Trump campaign ahead of the big debate. The Democratic Congressman Jake Auchincloss joining us here in a moment as well. But first, throughout the hour with me, Nan Hayworth, former Republican Congresswoman from the state of New York. Scott Bolden, former D.C. Democratic Party chair, NewsNation political contributor as well. Ashley Davis, former George W. Bush White House official. And Adam Hodge, former communications director for the DNC. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. Happy Monday, big week. The last time we had a debate, a lot of things changed.
Yes.
And so we'll see if
they won't change like that during this debate.
We'll see. Maybe. I mean, who knows?
Not on the Dems' part.
Not on the Democrats' part, maybe. I mean, we'll see. Obviously, nothing's going to be like last time, but who knows? It was obviously consequential. All right. So it looks like we're pretty close to a 50-50 coin flip or somewhere around there. The New York Times poll that came out over the weekend sort of laid all this out. But here's what caught my eye. Let's start here. How much is Kamala Harris to be blamed for? After all, she is the sitting vice president. And this was what some of the polling in the New York Times poll showed. Problems at the border? 63% she should be blamed for. Rising prices, 54%. We just talked about Afghanistan, the withdrawal. Half the country believes that she, the sitting vice president, should be blamed for how all of that went down. So I could look at you, the Democrats here, and I could say, that's a problem. And I could look at the Republicans and say, Trump's not pulling away from that. That's a problem. What is it? Ashley?
Well, first of all, 30% of this country is actually saying that they think the country is going in the right direction. That means 70% doesn't. And so what she has to do tomorrow night, especially, is say why she is running as an incumbent. She is the incumbent. And why are her policies going to be any different? And why do people believe her? And I don't think she can.
But I can show you polling that says that the majority of Americans don't blame her for this. She was not the decision maker. And while she can't say that per se, the polling shows that. But tomorrow night.
I mean, I just laid it out, though.
Yeah.
Then why are they running neck and neck? See,
well, that was my question to the other side.
But it's a fair question because if you're running neck and neck or head in certain swing states or not at 50-50, then and the public 30% wants to know more about her, and the other 50 to 60% want to know more about her, but 50 or 60% blame her for all these issues, then how is she maintaining her status in the polling? There's either a disconnect or she's still surging.
So she did, Vice President Harris did proudly assert that she was the final voice in the room when
it's not her
President
call,
Biden.
And we both know that.
But Scott, she said. Now then is she lying?
She was the last person in the room.
She
but the
proudly
president,
said she was
the vice president has no authority to do what he did.
But you know, the implication was that I gave President Biden the final, approval to go with his, the confidence to go with this plan, which was a disaster. She proudly acknowledged it at the time. She might not now, but that's a problem for her.
This is why I'm always reminded of the maxim: polls don't vote. People do.
Right.
Like, none of the polls that are out here are going to actually put a ballot, cast a ballot. That's why the campaign has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in the infrastructure, right? They got 300 offices in these battleground states. They got over 2,000 volunteers. 2,000 staff in battleground states. That's going to put votes on the column for her.
By the way, Adam, last week, that's what we were saying is polls don't matter.
Right.
So it is.
When you get a good one, you get a bad one, they don't matter. When you get a good one, they do.
You're right.
Let me ask you, though, because I was going through Kamala Harris's policies page earlier today, and it listed 19 different things and 5 about Project 2025. So if you have if you want an idea of how she might answer some of the questions tomorrow night, it might be lay it out and circle it back to Project 2025. That's what's on her website right now. But for example, her policy on the border, here's what it says in part, quote, about the vice president. She knows that our immigration system is broken and needs comprehensive reform that includes strong border security and an earned pathway to citizenship. And I'm reading that, Adam and Scott, and I'm saying, wait a minute. What is an earned pathway to citizenship? And what does that look like? And what are the details behind there? Is she going to get there eventually?
Well, look, I would go back to what she has said herself. She was for, and she said she would sign the border bill that the White House worked very closely with Republicans to pass, that we all know was on the table, and the only reason why it's not the law of the land right now is because Donald Trump stepped in.
That's a pretty big, but that's a pretty big ... Yeah,
but
is it not? Like, just to sort of leave something like that hanging out there, like, what does that look like? I don't know.
Well, Trump can ask her tomorrow. The press can ask her tomorrow. She fills in the blanks. But she's got a good story. I tell you, the border is a mess. But she's also got a good story as to why the Republicans really don't care. It's just a political talking point.
It's like the arsonist saying, I'll be the fireman now.
That bill would have not given the Republicans and Democrats everything, but a lot more than they have right now. And what does an executive order do with no money behind it?
Can I just say one thing, though? For 3 years, Democrats had the policy of the border. 6 to 9 months ago, 7 months ago, which is when the bipartisan bill came up, where were you for 3 years?
Well, we were being humane in our treatment.
So look, you can have this conversation, and I'm sure that they're going to have it tomorrow night. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris will. Part of my point in highlighting this was after 50 days, she put out her plans. You can go to her website and read them. A lot of it, though, is 30,000-foot level type stuff, and when 28% of the voters basically say they'd like to know more, and when 2/3 of those say it's on policy, here we are 50 days later. She is finally getting there, and I think we'll start to see some of it tomorrow night. All right, come on in, Congressman Jake Auchincloss, Democrat from the state of Massachusetts, joining us live here on the Hill, once again back from his summer break like his colleagues are, joining us live up from the Hill. Congressman, thanks for being back with us. Appreciate it.
Good evening.
Good evening to you. The White House, Congressman, asked today about Vice President Harris, and they asked if she was a progressive Democrat. And they basically gave the answer of President Biden stands behind her. Of course, the president stands behind her. No one would expect otherwise. Is she a progressive Democrat, though? How would you describe her?
I think labels are not helpful when they paint with that broad of a brush. I mean, what issues are we talking about? I know for me personally, we're talking about gun violence. I'm as progressive as they come. We're talking about economic policy. Feel differently. And so there's lots of granularity here. What matters is character. And that is the opportunity for tomorrow's debate. The American people know who Donald Trump is. They understand he's a morally bankrupt human being. And Kamala has an opportunity now to paint a sharp contrast of he is looking backwards at his own grievances about his own past. She is looking forwards. He is a small man. She is a woman of big spirit and big intellect. This is the opportunity of the debate, is helping to define her character for the American people.
You talk about looking backwards, but in that New York Times poll, Congressman, when asked who represents change, the sitting vice president, 40% said she represents change. 61% said it's Donald Trump. And when you pair that, Congressman, with what I was just talking about, how much is she to be blamed for the border, for rising prices, for Afghanistan? She is being blamed for those issues. And so if she's being blamed for it as the incumbent vice president, and she's not viewed as the change candidate, how do you make the argument like you just did, and she constantly does, that she's the one to move forward? Because it doesn't seem like the public's buying it.
Well, first and foremost, that the kind of change that Donald Trump is promising is not change that's going to help everyday Americans. For example, he wants to change our tax policy. Well, how's that going to affect everyday Americans? It's going to raise costs on the average middle-class family by $2,000 with a tariff policy that takes us back to the 1890s. How does he want to change access to reproductive rights? He's going to deny millions of American women any opportunity to access the reproductive health care that they need. Whereas Kamala Harris has plans to build 3 million more units of housing. It's going to lower housing prices, the biggest share of wallet for American families.
But is that resonating? Like, I hear you on the topics, but it doesn't seem like it's resonating.
Well, that's the purpose of a campaign. That's why we have to fight for every electoral vote over the next 60 days. This is a near-run thing. You'll get no contest from me on that one. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, absolutely tight. And this is the opportunity that Kamala has, starting with tomorrow night, is to help define herself in the American imagination. Because Donald Trump has a sharp ceiling and a sharp floor. She does not.
Let me ask you about Afghanistan, Congressman, for our audience here on NewsNation who might not know, or those listening to us on Sirius XM. You served in Afghanistan after graduating from Harvard, and instead of taking a big fancy job, you enlisted and you went overseas. And there has been this back and forth, Congressman Auchincloss, today in Washington about what went wrong nearly exactly 3 years ago. And I know that you are of the opinion that President Biden was right to do what he did at the time. But I wonder if you can outline for us both what went wrong under Donald Trump and what went wrong under Joe Biden.
What went wrong under Donald Trump is that he was out-negotiated by the Taliban in Doha, and he handcuffed both himself and the next administration to a timetable and a deal that gave Taliban the leverage. And that's one of the reasons, not the only reason, why his former vice president, his former defense secretary, chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, his former national security advisor, all of them have said that this man should not be trusted to be back in the Oval Office. I mean, that is a searing indictment from 4 men who would know whether he can be trusted with power. The challenge that Joe Biden had is that he made the courageous decision to end a war that had accomplished its counterterrorism purpose, but that had become lost in the muck of a counterinsurgency campaign that was entering its 3rd decade and $3 trillion of sunk cost. And withdrawing 100,000 troops and tens of thousands of more individuals is never going to be a 10 out of 10 dismount. Of course, there are going to be flaws, but ultimately, he took the correct action so that right now, as we're dealing with conflicts in Ukraine and belligerents in the South China Sea and the Middle East and conflagration, Americans don't also have to deal with 10, 50, 100,000 American troops in Afghanistan, which is what it would have taken to counteract the Taliban surge.
Congressman Jake Auchincloss, again, who served in Afghanistan, joining us live tonight up on Capitol Hill. Nice to always speak with you, Congressman. We'll see you back here soon.
Good to be with you.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Still to come here from the Hill over the next 45 minutes or so. Donald Trump making a major shift on marijuana. Why he says he is voting to legalize marijuana in his home state in the upcoming months. And the former president also threatening jail for U.S. election officials if they are caught cheating, as he puts it. One of his former White House spokesmen joins us live here on the Hill. And do you want the world's richest man trying to take a crack at cutting down on government waste? How would that even work? We are asking that question and finding out when the Hill on NewsNation returns. Hello from Washington. I'm Blake Berman. 57 days to go until November 5th. Congress is back, but we got our eyes on the big one. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. So just in time for tomorrow night's debate, Donald Trump now saying today that he will vote in favor of Florida's ballot measure to legalize recreational marijuana. This is an issue for Donald Trump because he's a Florida resident. He's going to vote there. Trump said in a post that as president, he would focus on research to unlock marijuana's medical uses and work with Congress to pass common sense laws on the issue. Now, as for Kamala Harris, as a senator back then in 2019, she introduced a bill to decriminalize marijuana, despite being a tough-on-crime prosecutor in her prior job as an attorney general in California. Her campaign has criticized Trump for what they call his quote-unquote brazen flip-flop on the issue. Now, here's what the former president is voting for in Florida, along with millions of Floridians. The ballot measure could legalize recreational marijuana use in the state and allow adults to purchase from licensed dispensaries. Now, the measure there in Florida specifically needs 60% of the vote to pass. All right, so here's the look of sort of where things are across the country. You see all the states in green. Those are states in which it is legal right now for recreational and medical use. So you can kind of break this up into 3 geographic areas, right? Out west, it's basically the entire West, or a good portion of it. Then you got about half or so of the Midwest, and then you go up to the Northeast, and you got, again, a substantial portion of the Northeast where that's the case. Where it's not the case is basically in the middle and down into the South. The yellow that was on that was where medical was. Now, Florida's not the only state that is going to have marijuana and cannabis in some form or another on the ballot. Both of the Dakotas, North Dakota, South Dakota, they'll be voting on issues there, potentially in Nebraska, depending on how things shake out, Arkansas as well. Of course, Florida, by the way, in 3 different cities in the state of Texas, including Dallas, there will be local measures there as well. Now, if the government if this passes, right, you pay taxes on things you buy. So we were looking into how much these states are actually getting in revenue, tax revenue, from cannabis. According to the Tax Foundation, it was about $3.3 billion in 2022. Nationwide, if there was nationwide legalization, it could generate some $8.5 billion annually. So that's sort of where some of this stands right now, as we try to but really as we await what's going on in the state of Florida, Donald Trump making his move on this. It kind of feels like, Ashley, that this is just where things are moving. And as it relates to Washington, one of the big issues is because it's still illegal federally, though legal at the states, how do you account for all the banking? Because this is a cash business right now.
Absolutely. And we need to pass a federal banking bill, which has been in the Senate bipartisan for actually 3 years now.
So why doesn't it pass?
More. Because there's still conservative states that people don't think that it should be legalized. But I think because of the election, I think this horse has left the building or whatever the barn a long time ago. This is gay marriage in 2024, 25, 26 in regards to states doing it. It's a done deal, and we need to have a banking law. There is federal banking law, and we need to move it from being criminalized to decriminalized.
But there is this dichotomy, right? Because it's still illegal federally, but legal at the state level.
And about 43 states. But here's the thing. But here's the thing, whether it's medical or recreational, is that these marijuana distributors and growers still have to pay taxes, whether their business is legal or illegal. It's in the tax code. And so the whole banking issue, they bank their funds with non-traditional banking means, right? You're losing the tax revenue if you don't legalize it. And this dichotomy between states and the federal, and by the way, the Biden administration has reduced it to, I think, a level 1 illegal drug. But both sides have got to get on the same page. Unfortunately, I don't think both sides are going to get on the same page until you got Dems in the White House, the House, and the Senate, and God forbid Republicans.
That's what you're hoping for.
It'll never happen.
Does Donald Trump move this way, or is Ashley right?
No, I'm not. I agree with Ashley that this is the way things are moving. And President Trump has, his brand was not, for most of his life, social conservative. He's a New Yorker. He understands that. He is not a firebrand against that kind of thing. Not that he's ever used it.
What happens real quick when Donald Trump says to Kamala Harris tomorrow night, but as a prosecutor, and he goes after her?
I think Kamala Harris will say, well, look what you did when you were president of the United States. When you were president, you strengthened and you locked up a lot of black people for marijuana, like you did. And he also flip-flopped on this issue, much like he flip-flopped on abortion in Florida. When it's on the ballot, there's another ballot measure that's really important to the outcome there. And he's completely been on either side. Democrats are going to hammer him for it.
All right, still much more ahead here on the Hill. Speaking of Trump, he is vowing long-term prison sentences for those who were caught, as he says, cheating in the election. We talked to a former Trump official about this and where the campaign stands ahead of tomorrow's debate, and I'll share with you what I'm hearing. All this when the Hill on NewsNation returns. Welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris off the campaign trail tonight, taking time instead to prepare for tomorrow's debate, the only one that is currently on the books. Over the weekend, the vice president took a break from debate prep to visit a shop in Pittsburgh where she spoke with supporters and took some questions from the media. Meantime, Trump held a rally in Wisconsin. He also took to social media, promising that if he wins, he would prosecute anyone found to be cheating in the 2024 presidential election, including, quote, lawyers, political operatives, donors, illegal voters, and corrupt election officials. Joining us now, former Trump White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley. Hogan, thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Always great to see you, sir. Look, there are Republicans who say, you know what, if Trump just talks issues, if he keeps it straight and steady, he wins. And then he fires off a post like that over the weekend. And I'm wondering why you think he did it and if it's smart.
Well, I mean, first of all, are you suggesting that someone who does commit a crime should not be punished for it?
So I'm not suggesting anything, but I could come back with you and say Donald Trump suggested a lot with Hillary Clinton and did nothing. So was that an empty threat?
No, it's not an empty threat because there are people committing crimes all over this country, and we know for a fact that there are convictions on fraud cases in every single state as it relates to election integrity in the past several decades across America. It's just a fact of what we have to deal with in a lot of these elections. And good for Donald Trump for calling people out and saying, hey, you're on notice. If you commit a crime during this next election, you're going to be punished for it. I mean, look, we already have thousands of people in this country illegally who are registered to vote in various states right now, which, of course, they can't vote in federal elections. That's a crime. That's why you see people like the Speaker.
But is this where you want his energy, Hogan, heading into this debate?
Oh, look, that's one Truth Social post he's put out where he's talked about the issues countless times all day long, every day, about the issues that matter to the American people. But I guarantee you a lot of people in this country are concerned that if you commit crimes in this country, you don't go to prison. We've seen that with blue state governors and secretaries of state and attorneys general and everybody else kind of turning a blind eye to the crime across this country. So good for Donald Trump for calling it out.
Here's what Nikki Haley said over the weekend, Hogan. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
No, it is not helpful to talk about whether women have children or whether they don't. It's not helpful to say any of those things that are personality driven or anything else. I have said that, and I will continue to say to Republicans, stop it. That's not helpful. You know, if you want to talk about things, stick with policy.
She was referring there to J.D. Vance. What would you say to Nikki Haley?
Well, Nikki Haley, is echoing the sentiment of many people across this country, which is focused on the issues that matter most. And Donald Trump has been doing that. There's a reason Nikki Haley also supports Donald Trump, said she would vote for him, gave him the full-throated endorsement, gave a speech at the convention, for heaven's sakes. We don't have to agree on every single thing. We're not like the Democrat Party, where they're in lockstep on all issues. But the fact of the matter is the people in this country are suffering because of the policies implemented by Harris and Biden. We are suffering at the grocery store, at the southern border, wars breaking out, and crime spiking in our major cities. That's all because of the bad policies. Donald Trump has focused on that in the past, and I guarantee you he will focus on that in the debate as well.
So you talk about the policies. I've brought this up a couple times tonight, Hogan, but in the New York Times poll, how much is Kamala Harris to be blamed for the following? Problems at the border, 63%. Rising prices, 54%. The Afghanistan withdrawal, 49%. If that's the case, Hogan, why is this still a coin flip, this race?
I should ask you, after billions of dollars of free positive press for Kamala Harris by the mainstream media for a month, when she wouldn't take a question, I can't believe she's not up 20 points in all these states. Give me a break. 95% of the news coverage against Donald Trump while he was president was negative. So we have to fight against not just the Democrats, but the referees, always calling the flags on our side and letting the Democrats go unchecked. They cover for her. They carry her water. The problem is the American people know better. The American people are feeling the brunt of these bad policies. They've been kicked in the teeth for the last 3 years, and they know exactly who to blame. That's Kamala Harris.
It doesn't bother, it doesn't worry you at all that even with those numbers, Hogan, he's still not able to seemingly pull away?
Not for the reasons I just mentioned. I mean, the glowing coverage she gets is sickening at this point. No journalist is really doing their job as it relates to Kamala Harris. She gives one fluff interview for 16 minutes. Come on. You know the score out there, Blake. Give me a break. The fact is, this country is hurting, it's suffering, and it's because of Kamala Harris. And this country has always been divided, and we've had, the last election was decided by 42,000 votes across 3 states, for heaven's sakes. It is always going to be tight and always going to be razor thin, regardless of who's at the top of the ticket on both sides.
Hogan, I'm hearing that Trump is going to try to force Kamala Harris to explain why haven't you done this already? And that he is going to go after her on the comment of, quote, my values haven't changed. And as a former spokesperson for Donald Trump and as someone who knows him and his inner working well, I wonder what you believe we're going to see out of Donald Trump tomorrow evening.
Well, if the reports are true, I think that's a smart move for Donald Trump because Kamala Harris's entire shtick is saying, I promise I will. On day one, I'm going to. It's always future looking, but the fact is she's been the vice president of the United States now for the last 4 years. These are all happening on her watch. She can look around and pretend like these things are happening to her, but they're happening because of her. The American people are feeling the toughness, the problems in their lives because of these policies. And so when the left and the media try and tell the American people, no, you're just dumb, you don't understand. Your prices really are good. No, you're just dumb, you don't understand. The southern border is really closed. They know better, and they also know who to blame. If Donald Trump can put that onus onto her, like the American people know exactly where it belongs and can kind of accentuate that, he's going to have a great night.
All right. You know we're asking the questions, by the way. Hogan Gidley, former principal deputy press secretary in the Trump administration. Thank you, Hogan. See you soon.
Thanks, Blake.
You got it. So that's what I'm told, is that he's going to, you can expect Trump to sort of bring up the, why haven't you done this already? And Kamala Harris in that CNN interview said, my values haven't changed. And if that's the case, then what are your values on, so on and so forth, right? When Donald Trump goes down that path, if/when tomorrow night, how do you expect Kamala Harris to respond?
Well, I think, first of all, you're taking a lot of leaps of faith there that Donald Trump's going to stick to the plan. But we'll take the leap of faith with you for the sake of argument.
Take it at face value.
Look, I think she will lay out her new vision forward, her new path forward. She's got to talk about what she wants to do and why she wants to, the record that she has to run on, the accomplishments, and look at where the economy is. Look, inflation in the United States, Donald Trump talks about it all the time. It's the lowest in the world. right, of all the major economies. And she has a plan to actually do more about it, whether it's housing costs or rental. Like, that is she can talk about her ideas and her plans.
So why haven't you done it already?
Well, because she's the vice president. She's not the president of the United States. The Republicans, and a large swath of them, want to continue to run against Joe Biden, and she's not Joe Biden. And I can show you polling that says that while that poll shows that they're blaming her 50%, 60%, she's still up in the polls fighting for every vote, one. And two, Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden, and if the American public gives her a chance to introduce herself, like she's going to do tomorrow, reintroduce herself, then we ought to be in good shape.
I just gave the two Democrats a chance here. Cue up the Bernie Sanders soundbite from over the weekend, because this is getting a lot of play. Bernie Sanders essentially asked about who Kamala Harris is. Watch.
No, I don't think she's abandoning her ideals. I think she's trying to be pragmatic and doing what she thinks is right in order to win the election.
Did he just say the quiet part out loud there? That she's moving to the center just to purely win an election?
Rhetorically moving to the center, but but intends fully, one presumes, based on what the senator said, to reassume her deeply so-called progressive character as soon as she wins the election. That should make Americans ask her more questions and more probing ones.
I'm just going to go back to what I said earlier tonight. 70% of this country think the country is going in the wrong direction, and she's running as an incumbent. Yes, she's a progressive. Yes, Bernie Sanders would say that. But she's saying that to win, but she's not going to lose the progressives. She's trying to get the middle. So
I gotta run a break. Do you put any stock into what Bernie Sanders says there?
She's a progressive. She's talked about a middle class.
Is she going to go on the stage tomorrow night and say, I'm a progressive America?
I mean, I don't know.
She shouldn't.
I don't think she will, but
she's not I'm sorry, go right ahead.
No.
She's not a progressive, right? I watched that interview originally, and what Bernie Sanders said is she's progressive on some issues, and she's a moderate on other issues, and she's free to do that.
Her voting record in the Senate was the furthest left of anyone, including Bernie Sanders.
What's she moderate on?
That's her record.
Let me leave it this. Did he say the quiet part out loud with Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders?
No.
Okay. All right. Still to come here on the Hill. Can Elon Musk really make the government more financially responsible? Why Trump wants the world's richest man to lead a government efficiency commission. What could that be all about? What would that look like? And is Elon the right guy? The expert when it comes to all of this joins us on the other side of the break.
NewsNation tomorrow. Vice President Kamala Harris, former President Donald Trump on the only network with respect for all Americans. Live coverage starts at 7/6 Central, followed by the ABC presidential debate simulcast. It's debate night with Chris Cuomo tomorrow.
Efficiency Commission tasked with conducting a complete financial and performance audit of the entire federal government.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. If you were watching us during commercial break, yes, that's what it's like here, by the way.
I hope they didn't hear us.
No, they didn't hear us. That, though, is former President Donald Trump endorsing one of Elon Musk's latest policy ideas, a government efficiency commission. Now, if elected, Trump plans, he says, to form the commission and appoint Musk to lead the federal agency. The details, as you might imagine, still in the works. But Trump says the first order of business would be to create a plan that would eliminate all fraud and improper payments within 6 months. Musk is embracing the idea, saying in part, quote, I look forward to serving America. If the opportunity arises, no pay, no title, no recognition is needed. He even posted a meme of himself as the head of the Department of Government Efficiency. There you go. The mission is receiving some positive feedback, also a bit of skepticism. Joining me now is Thomas Schatz. He is the president of the government watchdog, Citizens Against Government Waste. Thomas, thanks for being with us here on the Hill. All right, let's talk about the idea, then the individuals. Is this a good idea?
It's a great idea. It hasn't been done since the Grace Commission under President Reagan, 1982 to 1984. And Citizens Against Government Waste was founded right after the Grace Commission to follow up on those recommendations. J. Peter Grace and Jack Anderson were our co-founders. And by the way, when President Trump says we can save trillions, he's right. The government has grown so large, and we've helped save $2.4 trillion since our founding. You got a $7 trillion budget. You got 15%, you got $1 trillion.
You really think you can get to trillions?
Absolutely. We have our own plan, $4 trillion over 5 years to balance the budget. You have to cut trillions over 10 years because otherwise you can't get to a balanced budget. You're talking about think about the math, a $7 trillion annual budget. Again, 15% is a little over $1 trillion. Companies cut 15% on a regular basis just to stay in business. So it's not an unreasonable idea. Even billions or hundreds of billions would be a good start.
So, look, you mentioned the number, show like Social Security benefits, Medicare, so on and so forth. These are big numbers, but to cut 15% of that, the country's not going to stand for that.
Well, we're not talking about any specific area. We're talking about across the federal government, not just in one place. So you can look at improper payments, for example. They're about, I think, $200+ billion a year, and that's simply making sure that money goes where it's supposed to go. The government does a terrible job of that. That's why they have so many duplicative and overlapping programs. And if you just focused on getting benefits to people and not having so many programs doing the same thing, you could accomplish a lot.
So talk to me about Elon Musk. Elon Musk, wealthiest man on the planet, runs some of the most important consequential companies in this country. Is he the right guy to lead it?
Well, I think a business person with an outside perspective on how any operation should run is a great idea. Remember, Peter Grace was the chairman of the Grace Commission. They had the Packard Commission, where they had the head of Hewlett-Packard looking at the operations of the Defense Department. So it takes an outside eye to look at how the government should operate, because when you're inside the Beltway, you have a totally different perspective.
Yeah, is that outside eye, though, Musk?
It could be. Could, again, be another business executive. And the way to do it is to bring in other business executives. The Grace Commission had 160 business executives. They had about 2,000 volunteers to do the work. And that's the same format that we think should be followed for whatever comes out of President Trump's proposal.
All right. Thomas Schatz, appreciate it. Fascinating. We'll see where this goes. Talk to you again soon. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it for being with us here on The Hill.
Thank you.
What about it, Elon?
You should go to Adam on this because he took a lot of notes.
You were okay? I see your notes.
A lot of crazy ideas. I've heard Donald Trump. This ranks right up.
How so?
I mean, look at what has happened to Twitter since Donald Trump took it over. Not only are the banks trying to jump from their investment because they realize like they may be holding a lot of paper that's not worth it.
They're writing the value down.
Totally. And because he's run the product into the ground. But I think it's also like, it's not a surprise that he had Doge.
Yeah, which is a crypto reference.
Crypto coin that he is. So with Donald Trump, like with most things, the graft is not far from
You think this is just pure marketing?
Totally.
Unlike the Bidens.
Come on.
It's
Unlike the Bidens. Well, they kept it within the family.
It's completely unrealistic, too, because of the conflicts that he brings to the table under his leadership. But if you look at the chart that you put up, where are you going to cut inefficiency? You probably got inefficiency in Medicare, Social Security benefits, veterans, education, and defense. But then what are you going to do about the government bureaucracy?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely...
Government bureaucracy is waiting.
Come cut us.
Yes,
well,
come cut us.
You can cut. And also, remember the biggest thing in Washington is when you do really something bad, you get promoted. I mean, how many people can get cut?
Mediocrity has never been better.
None of the federal government is back at work.
Not only that, but they are required to spend the entirety of what's budgeted every year. They don't apparently get rewarded for savings. There are opportunities galore. And you know who I'd make head of it if it weren't Elon Musk? Our own Mick Mulvaney.
There you go, Mick. You're a former congresswoman.
Yes, sir.
Realistically, give me a percentage that if you were to actually do something like this, 1-2%.
Oh my gosh. Oh, well, I mean, what could be lost? I mean, you could easily cut 30% of the government.
All right.
Seriously, because we've all seen the attempted abuses, and
by the way, speaking of Musk, his SpaceX, its Starlink service, is also reaching new heights. Musk, get this, now controls 2/3 of all active satellites. The Starlink satellite network is now growing by an average of 3 per day. Meantime, Brazil reportedly, quote, can't live without it. The satellites are everywhere from mining sites to isolated villages, but across the globe in Africa, Starlink has finally started launching, for example, in Zimbabwe. And there's more. Musk's SpaceX will launch its first uncrewed starships to Mars in the upcoming years. It is fascinating to see Elon Musk's reach with all of this. I was looking at total number of satellites active in orbit right now. There's about 10,000. In 2021, it was about 3,500, so it's gone 3x. Musk and Starlink have about 2/3.
And he's
of
on
that.
a mission to benefit the world.
And Spectrum.
Yep.
And what?
Spectrum.
What do you mean?
Spectrum.
Oh,
is,
like Internet Spectrum.
No, that's he also owns a lot of
and you guys love him.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, look, what I'll remember is back when I was at the National Security Council, when we had to worry about whether he was actually going to cut off the satellites, Starlink, for Ukraine to be able to wage the war and protect themselves. So it is very risky.
Yep. So and
that's someone at the beck and call.
And that's person agnostic. Right, it doesn't matter who the individual is, and that's one of the. Not just about him.
It's the same with defense contractors.
All right.
And look at the failures of Boeing with Starlink.
And you can, to Scott's point, it could be too much power for any individual.
For anyone, right.
All right, still to come here on the other side of the break, not just your physical health, but what about your mental health? Why your insurer might soon be forced to pay up. Leland Vitter joins us other side of the break. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on News Nation. So should mental health issues get the same insurance coverage as physical health? Well, the Biden administration announcing today that they will start requiring health insurers to guarantee equal coverage of both.
For the president, it's simple. If you have a mental health crisis, you should be able to access the care that you need, the same way you access care for a broken bone or a heart attack.
The move would make mental health and substance abuse treatment the same as any other sort of physical condition, you could say, that's covered by insurers. Now, critics of the rule argue it is, quote, burdensome and raises concern of government overreach. Leland Vitter, host of On Balance. Hello, hello. This is one of those things the Biden administration has constantly done, sort of, I don't know if it's populism, but things that, whether you like the administration or not, things that folks all across the country, these little things here and there that I do think add up.
Kind of like